Alright, this is a little bit of a response to Matt, Hey There or That. I saw your latest video on neuroscience. You're talking about responding to some guy who made a response to you on your blog about neuroscience and claiming that you were ignorant of science. And I congratulate you on your response, though there was something you said towards the end that didn't quite sit right with me. I was nodding my head through most of the video, but when you talked about the two ways you can interpret neuroscientific data, you said either that neurons cause consciousness, or the other explanation you gave was in which it sounded like it was the one you were advocating, was that consciousness is this field that then the brain's like this radio transmitter picks up on it. And then I noticed someone commented on your video saying that you were advocating dualism, and you objected to that, talking about non-duality. But what you said with the consciousness as a field that the brain picks up, that does sound rather Cartesian, I must say. Maybe you didn't mean it that way, but I guess if that's what you believe, that's fine. It's just that it seems to contradict some of the other stuff you've said about consciousness. I mean, I've been studying enactivism and wouldn't have really probably heard about it if not for you. So I mean, I would think you'd know a little bit more about enactivism than I would, but it seems like if the enactivist paradigm is saying anything, it's that consciousness isn't a thing at all. It's an action. It's something that we do. So the whole fields, the radio transmitter metaphor doesn't seem to fit with the enactivist pan-experientialist paradigm you've talked about. I mean, it's like from a process perspective, we can understand consciousness as prehension, as a relationship between one event or one actual occasion and another, and and then of course the societies of occasions creating that, and then of course there are two different kinds of relations between the actual occasions, which are exterior relations and interior relations, and so the whole brain as a radio receiver, it's just a little more modern metaphor for what essentially Descartes was talking about, and I think part of the whole enactivist paradigm was kind of trying to get past Cartesianism, because of course a lot of cognitive science still is very Cartesian. The cognitivist viewpoint, where the brain is a sort of computer. That's basically the Cartesian view, except there's instead of this disembodied cogito, they say it's the brain, but it's still this kind of processing thing. Whereas the enactivist thing understands that cognition is a matter of relations with one's environment. It's a kind of movement, not a substance. So like I said, if you want to defend the that other metaphor, that's fine. I guess I'm just a little bit confused about why we use that kind of metaphor, given the other things you've talked about. It just doesn't add up to me. And for me, with pan-experientialism, the way I see it is that neurons, of course, I guess consciousness, is a tricky term, and that's why I like the term pan-experientialism, because it pits experience as something below the level of consciousness. We physically experience things that we aren't necessarily conscious of, until, of course, some change happens. We're not We don't have to be conscious of the room temperature until it changes, but we experience it. So, in a sense, consciousness is a matter of contrast, um, and like I said, of movement, of change. No process, no change, no consciousness. Um, so, and for me, I tend to wonder how why one particular type of cell, what we call a neuron, would produce consciousness, or why a bunch of them together would produce consciousness uh, when we have organisms that seem to act in a seemingly conscious way without neurons. I mean, obviously, there's jellyfish which don't have a brain or central nervous system. There's also, and that yet they're able to move around in a way that, they move towards food and away from danger. So too do bacteria do that sort of thing, and of course they're single-celled organisms. So I think that there's at least a cellular correlate of the brain which allows some level of cognition. And I'm sure I'm not telling you anything that you would disagree with. Except it does seem to undermine the whole receiver metaphor. I mean, because bacteria don't have brain. Then of course we get a little bit more elusive when we try to ask if there's molecular consciousness or molecular experience, all the way down to atoms and the subatomic level, like electrons. But of course, if we understand them all in relations and understand their interior relations and exterior relations, then it doesn't matter whether we call it consciousness or experience or what have you. There is some subconscious level of experience that builds up at different emergent levels, and eventually we get what we know as human consciousness. And so yeah, and I'm sure this is nothing new to you. I mean, I'm basically almost repeating back to you what you've said in the past. But I guess I'm just a little bit confused by some of the metaphors, and explanations you mentioned in that video. So, just some thoughts. Peace.